Any questions you have for me before we officially get started?
I got nothing. I asked my question. I just want to know how you're doing and making sure check in on you. So I'm good. I'm ready to jump in whenever you are.
Well, and I know we'll talk about, how we're doing, as we move into the next hour, but from a personal place, how are you doing this morning? Because I know that there's a lot happening.
Yeah, there's a lot. Personally, I'm mixed. So I woke up and I saw a video of this Black man who was at first talking with two officers who were trying to go into his house without his permission and search his house because they had got a call that there was a domestic disturbance at his apartment. And the call that the officer kept repeating was that it had been between a man and a woman. And the Black man who was the resident was saying, there is no woman here. There has not been a woman here. There's just me and my son. He called his son and he was like, son, can you come out here and show them your face to show them that you're okay and that we're fine? And while this is all going on from the beginning of, sorry about that.
That's all right.
From the beginning of the video, the officers have their foot inside of the man's house, like, so they're literally like past the threshold of his house, and the whole time he's saying like, y'all are trespassing. I do not give you permission. You do not have a warrant. If you go and get a warrant, then you're more than welcome to come back here. He was like, you can have the officer monitor the door while you go and do it. Like, we can talk, but you got to like get off of my property and I'll keep the door ajar. So it just, and then of course, two more officers come and the situation escalates, and so watching that, and it ended up, what ended up happening was just rushed inside of the man's house anyways, in front of his son. It seemed as if, looking from the camera, that they did push him to the ground. One of the officers did, or two of them did, while two of the other officers then proceeded to search his house. And of course, they didn't find a woman. They didn't find anything. The only thing they found was a bowl broken, and it was because the man had the dog there, and the dog had reached up and grabbed, and he moved the bowl, and the bowl broke. There was no blood. There was nothing, like it was. And so that made me mad this morning. But I took a breath. I let that go. I felt what I felt, and then I let it go. And then I tried to move on and focus on something else. And so I did. So yeah. And so after that, then things got a little lighter as I watched the season finale of Insecure by Issa Rae. Which was great, which I have to talk to Andrea about. So I'm sure she might call during this talk. I'll have to like ignore her call, but we're supposed to talk about the Insecure finale. I kind of called some things without really calling, and so yeah, so it was. So that was fun. And then since then, I've just been sort of like hanging out and reading. The Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tona Adeyemi. This is a sequel to The Children of Blood and Bone, which is a dope young adult novel, which is based off of magic in Nigeria. Well, it's sort of based off of cities in Nigeria, but it's not really Nigeria. It's sort of, so all the cities are named after real cities. But it's about, this king who eliminates magic and this little girl who goes on a journey to bring it back. And of course, dethrone or, kill the evil king and replace it with a just government. And so, yeah, so far it's dope as fuck.
Okay. I'm going to pause you on that so you can talk about it like on air and share it with everybody else.
Yeah. So that's how I'm doing.
But before we move on, I just want to reflect that your day started with another story of police assholes violating Black personal spaces. And I heard you say that made you mad and that you felt it and you let it go. And that the clinician, the social worker in me knows how important it is that we can actually access our feelings and give names to feelings. And then you have a choice of how that resides in your body and how and if you want to let it go. So I just can't move on without first acknowledging that. And thank you for keeping it real. And we can just dive right on in. There are no rules here. This is not rated for children, so you can say anything you want.
Great.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna just do my little spiel and then we'll improv from there.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
You good? Awesome, Jeff. All right. Hello. Welcome to Radius Cafe. I'm Lori, and today I'm joined by Lieutenant Alexander Ellis, not Alice. I'm starting that all over again. You have to get your name right. Okay. Hello, and welcome to Radius Cafe. I'm Lori, and today I'm joined by my friend and teacher, Lieutenant Alexander Ellis, who I first met many years ago at Portland Playhouse. Welcome to the show, Tevin.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you here. And I want to share just a little bit of your bio because I think it's always really important to add some context, right? And so people know a little bit about how I've come to know you and some of the many ways that you show up in this world. You are an actor and a playwright. You are a founder and a teacher. You are a writer, a freestyler, and a beatboxer. I would add to that bio that you are a disruptor and a truth teller, which is part of why I admire and respect you so much. And that in your bio that I pulled off of the Portland Playhouse page, you said you're using your art to end the oppression of people globally, which is a big statement. And I wonder what that means to you and how you do that.
It means, first and foremost, it is empowering people to, at least myself is first and foremost, but definitely people to recognize that they have the power within themselves to end their own oppression. Speaking as a group, as Black people, we won't get out of this situation until we get out of it ourselves. And I think that one of the best ways that people are inspired and encouraged and get a blueprint of how to do anything is through arts, through movies, through dance, through music, through theater, through television, through storytelling, oral storytelling, which, that is art. And so it is these things that teach us the virtues and the actions that might be necessary to stand up and take our freedom and end our oppression. I think also in that it is the money and the proceeds that I get from the work that I do will also go into all to that end. So I hope one day to be on $1 million, productions and make, bukus of money to tell my stories, because a lot of that money will go back into the community, not just the community here in the United States, but also where there are Black people, which feeds into the Pan-Africanism. So that's sort of my that's sort of what that means to me in a vague sense, but also in a more direct sense. It is doing cultural exchanges, cultural enrichment. taking Black people from the United States to Africa, bringing African people from the continent here, African people from South America to Africa. And, you know, I hope to be able to create this cultural exchange where we understand that as Black people, our plights are not limited to our cities, countries, languages, wherever we are. We don't catch hell because we are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whether we speak Portuguese or English, French, or Congolese, or whatever we speak, we catch hell because we're Black. And so again, art is a way to, the money from that is to then, you know, have that exchange so that we don't, it's not just things that we hear, but you actually get to see it, you get to feel it, you get to touch it. And creating that connection, I think, builds unity and builds solidarity and builds commonality. And that's one of the things that white supremacy doesn't actually want to happen, because that is one of the beginnings of the ends of white supremacy.
Okay, so for anyone tuning in, what just happened over that last 2 minutes is exactly why I invited you to come and speak with me. Because I like to think of it in a conversation about like sort of breadcrumbs, and you just provided so many breadcrumbs on this table here at Radius Cafe for me to pick up, and I couldn't keep notes furiously enough to keep up with you, Tev, and like, so we can go with how art builds connection and what you believe is the power of telling stories. We can talk about what Pan-Africanism means. We can talk about your ideas around cultural exchanges and what you would try to hope about to do that. And then you end by saying that white supremacy is trying to stop connection and solidarity and commonality. So I want to hear about all those things. Where do you want to start?
You know, I don't know, because you know what I'm trying to do in my life and in my work is make them all bleed, so that like I could start wherever, because they all hopefully connect at some point. I will say how I was talking about the connection piece.
Yes, please.
Being in theater and film and TV, and specifically in theater, then I can speak specifically about theater, and because theater, you have to be there. You know, it's actually seeing the artists do their work, and being in the world and experiencing the world, rather than this almost a two-dimensional version of it when you're seeing a movie or a TV. Still powerful, still impactful, but just in a different way. And so in theater, when you purchase your ticket, you at least, as the artist, I know I got you for the first 10, 15 minutes, you know, for the first 10 to 15 minutes. And in that first 10 to 15 minutes, I think is where the connection begins. With a show like Hands Up, when it starts off with, I think there's a difference between a Caucasian person and a white person. Like that's the first line of the entire play.
Okay.
Right? And from that one sentence, it pulls you in and you're like, wait, what? And you want to hear him say more. And so he does. And I think just that moment of wait, what, that connection allows for somebody to then listen. And what the art, or what theater, what all the art forms do, is exactly, especially what theater does, is it allows you to listen without having to debate and argue and be judged or judged. You can just sit there in the dark and you can have whatever thoughts and feelings that you have, and they just be only in your existence, in your world. And then I think you are more susceptible and more open to, in that same moment, to hear what a Black person has been saying to you for over 400 years.
Yeah.
In that moment, you're able to be like, oh, okay, you know what? I kind of understand why you would think that all white people are racist, or all cops are bastards, or whatever your whatever you think. I can understand that, because I've just seen an hour and a half or 2 hours of the build up to that feeling and to that justification. Now, whether you leave there and you stand by that is another thing. But I think at that point, you are open to a conversation about whatever it is without readily getting emotional. And hopefully, I think more times than not, if it is something that is as powerful, as well written, and as well done as Hands Up, the more times than not, you're going to leave there changed. Mm-hmm. Even in the smallest way, you're not going to leave there saying that, oh, all lives matter, or Black people need to just get over it, or racism is no longer, we're in a post-racial society. I think that you would leave there not thinking, or at least not saying those things with the same confidence that you used to. It's a way for you to, when you come and see a show, when you come and see theater, you really put yourself in a position to put on the shoes of someone else, to put on the clothes and the experience of someone else, and from that, your mind opens, or at least broadens a bit. Whether it stays open or not, there's a little crack in the door, and hopefully some truth and someone else's experience, whether it is true or not, which it is just someone else's experience, is to come through, and you get to see life from more than just your own perspective.
Yes, and I can say personally that seeing you on stage in Hands Up and in other productions, that it is a crack in the door, and it does shift how I think, and it does illuminate Black experiences in ways that I have not had access to before. But what you just added that I hadn't actually thought about is that when I'm in my role as an executive coach and I'm working with leaders, one of the primary things that I help leaders to do better is listen, because most of us suck at listening, right? Like, not just like a majority, like, and most people feel like, do you think you're a good listener? I think that most people go, yeah, I'm a pretty good listener. And I'm here to say, after working with clients for 30 years of my life, that most of us suck at listening. And that for you to say part of what makes any kind of performative art useful is that I'm not allowed to talk during the show. So if my personality is one that I'm an external processor and I like to talk and I like to debate, that I have to wait at least till the end of the show to be able to do that. And that forces me as the audience member to shut the hell up and allow the people on the stage to have the stage. And thank you for showing me one more reason that I know what you do as an actor is effective.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing for me as an actor to leave a theater, and I have gotten into a habit of trying to like sneak out of the back door, but because the work that I've been doing has been pretty heavy recently, and so afterwards I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just go out the back. But in those times where I still see the audience like slowly spilling out from the theater, I kind of like people watch a bit, and I just kind of like take in how they are still moving through the world after seeing these. And it really impacts me when I see people still holding on to the thoughts and the ideas and the messages that we just presented, for the last however long. So.
Well, I want to, so this is where I put on my social worker hat a minute, and that is to say, I certainly have lingered in the theater afterwards because I wanted to tell an actor how much I was moved by their work, and I value that. And I also completely value that once you've shown up and held the space that you do for however long your production is, I totally get that you just want to make a beeline for the door and go take care of you. Because the way that most actors, most good actors or performers, but the way I certainly have seen you perform is that it is a visceral experience, right? You are not just memorizing the lines. It is not just something you're keeping in here, because what I know as a social worker and what I know you know as a performance artist is that it is embodied and we feel it. And the reason why I feel it when I watch you is because you are feeling it in the moment on that stage. And that is where the magic happens. And when I saw you perform Hands Up a couple years ago, it was when you did a performance at Wieden & Kennedy. And the one thing that I remember the most, and I think it's your character, is when you ask us to keep our hands up for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Was that you, or was that someone else's story?
That was someone else's story. I wish it was me. All of that was written by someone else. But most of that was something that I have either experienced myself or know a person who experienced it themselves. So it wasn't my story, but it was my story.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally hear that. What I meant was it your character in the play that asks us to hold our hands up?
Oh, yes.
Right. So it's possible, Tevin, right, that there's multiple characters in that show that share experiences, right? And so it would make sense that because I know you personally, that your part affected me the most. And you asked us to hold our hands in the air for a long time, and my shoulders hurt. And you called on us to keep them up so that we felt that. And that whether we're teaching on the stage or in our offices or through dance or at a protest, that we know that we first have to get in to someone's mind to make them lean forward, but we're only going to change hearts and cause action when we get into their bodies. Yes, no, what do you understand about the importance of experiencing things in your body?
Oh, that's the best way for your mind and your muscles to be like, oh no, we don't like this. This is, or we love this, depending on whatever it is that you're doing. But when you're holding your hands up here, you're just in the theater and you paid to do this. You're not being trained. Well, in Hands Up, you don't pay. So for people,
yes.
But you're doing this for with no consequences other than you are learning and hopefully being, your mind is being transformed by this. But you're just in our lives, in real life, this is, if I put him down, I'm a threat.
Yeah.
If I move at all, I'm a threat. And so what that teaches you, or at least what that tells you, is that you don't really know things until your body feels them themselves. It's not possible to do, but I wonder what a monologue would be like if you had to have something or somebody on your neck. Of course you can't do, and you can't do a long time or whatever, but you know what I mean? Like I think people have to understand that physical pain amounts to mental anguish and psychological manifestations. Like when you're going through things physically, it starts to affect your psyche.
Yes.
And of course your psyche affects your spirit. And and once your spirit is ruined or damaged, you're walking through life as a broken person. You're walking through life not as your full self, not showing up as your full self. But if your spirit is, of course, emboldened, if your spirit is empowered, your psyche is empowered and your physicality is empowered. And that's why I love things like the fist, like holding up the fist.
Oh yeah.
Power fist. This is power. This is a symbol of, oh, I'm strong. So yeah.
Okay. So again, you just dropped so many crumbs, and as the quote unquote interviewer, I feel like there's 100 places we could go. So one thing is, um, you moved me in your performance of Hands Up. I have been forever changed by any time I've seen August Wilson's plays performed on a stage, and I've certainly seen you in some of those, and Fences, I believe, was the most recent one. And for folks that are listening, if you haven't had the chance to say August Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong, but his words are so powerful that to find his play and read it is still an incredible way to access him, I would believe.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Yeah, you broke up a bit. You said, correct me if I'm wrong, and then you started chopping up.
Oh, okay, sorry. That if people can't, well, with COVID, we can't quickly run out to a theater and see an August Wilson play. We can watch him perform online, right? Fences is now a movie. But yep. we could buy and download his scripts and read his scripts, right, Tevin?
Oh, yes. You can get the entire century cycle.
Okay. So for folks, for my white kin who are trying to better understand the lived experiences of Black people in this country, I would love to say, go read some August Wilson plays.
Yes, August Wilson, Lynn Nottage, Suzan-Lori Parks. Those are all playwrights, by the way, for people that are listening. Black playwrights who help really craft and tell the Black experience in the United States. And Lynn Nottage actually has a play that details the Congolese woman's experience during the Civil War in the Congo in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, but definitely August Wilson. August Wilson has 10 plays that detail the African American experience from throughout the entire 20th century. Each play represents a decade, and from each decade, you get a glimpse into what Black people were going through. So yes, please.
Yeah. And then while Wilson is a very recognized playwright, a play that really hit home for me personally, I'm guessing is a local playwright, and I don't remember the name, but I know you do. And it's the one I saw at the Firehouse, where you play a boxer, but not the Cassius Clay one. And it's about the incredible harm that our local hospital, Emmanuel, did in displacing hundreds of Black families and businesses from the Elliott neighborhood during the time they wanted to expand it, the hospital. And I lived in that neighborhood for 17 years. And if you could just talk a little bit about that show, and if you know the writer's name, to let us know how to look that up, and just what it was like to be a part of that show. I'd love to hear that, Tevin.
Yeah, most definitely. That was, I want to say that was my first show with the Vanport Mosaic, which was founded by Damaris Webb, S. Renee Mitchell, and Laura Laforte, or Laforte. Hope I said her name right. But those three ladies co-founded the organization, and all of their shows, all of their artistic presentations are coupled with some sort of historical display or educational piece that goes with it. And so for our production, I believe there was upstairs in the IFCC, there was a room of pictures and photographs and artifacts sort of from that time. So you can see and touch, and and you also got, I think we also had a video of people who did live in the neighborhood and sort of talking about that experience. So you got, like the older generation hearing their experience. But the play was written by Rich Rubin. Rich Rubin is an older white man who was, I believe he is born and raised here in Portland. and spent a great, as far as I know, spent a great deal of time in his upbringing around young Black Americans, or around Black Americans. He was young at the same time as well. And so a lot of the plays that he write kind of centers around the Black American experience, particularly here in Portland. And he's written a few different plays that have detailed either the flood of the 40s, the redlining of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I believe he's written something even more contemporary since then. But this play really, I had been learning about Portland as I was being here. Like, you know, I knew about that World War II and Kaiser was the thing that brought Black people here. But before that, all I knew about really anything out here was like the Oregon Trail, because I didn't know much about Oregon, you know what I mean, coming out here. And I knew it wasn't, I knew it was not a slave state. I knew it was, I knew that. But then when I got here, and I believe it was actually, it may have been a little before we did Left Hook, or maybe during Left Hook, I learned more about the Lash laws, and how anti-Black it was here, and so on and so forth. And at the time, I was living in Southwest Portland, but I had people taking me through the historic Northeast neighborhoods, and down Williams and down Mississippi. And I was like, damn, this is crazy. Like all of these places that were that are talked about in the story, most of them, not all of them, are gone. Like not like barely standing and like decrepit. No, they're like gone.
Gone.
Not Street Boxing, thankfully, is still up and running, and still pretty much has a lot of the community coming in and out of it. At the time, I was a gym member. My gym membership was with the Matt Dishman Community Center, which was at one point in time not Street Boxing. And so, it still has all, like, in there. You can still see posters and pictures of past boxers and past champions, because Portland did have a champion that came from Street Boxing, and so it was sort of like, through all of that is why we chose to go with boxing as sort of like the central action to sort of like drive it, while we filter in the real things that's happening in the community.
Yes. Yeah. And it does that so effectively. And if folks are watching or listening to us and they're from Portland, then I really encourage them to look up more about the dark history in Oregon in general, and how anti-Black we've been forever. But specifically what happened in regards to Emmanuel Hospital. And for folks who are like, I don't know what he's talking about with Williams and Vancouver, I challenge those folks to look up redlining in their own city, and look up gentrification in their own city.
Because it's everywhere.
Right, it's everywhere, right? This is not germane to Portland, Oregon. I want to make sure with the rest of our time, Tevin, that I give you some space to talk about some of your favorite topics, because this 46-year-old white woman can't just naturally weave in what this conversation has to do with Black nationalism. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to just casually say, talk to me about reparation of Africa. I was just talking about that with my 12-year-old this morning, right? Like, there's no easy segue for me. So if you want to be the teacher, if you want to talk about these things close to your heart, I'm all ears.
I can tell you about Black nationalism. Black nationalism is the idea that we control the economic, social, political, medical determination of our people. That we are self-reliant, meaning that, you know, we have our own grocery stores, our own farmers, our own produce, our own you know, like our own tailors, you know, like it is the idea that we don't have to go outside of ourselves to sustain ourselves. It is the idea that if we live in a city that has 30% of the population, then 30% of everything in that city should be Black. Everything in that city. So that's sort of the idea under the umbrella of a citizen of the United States. Now, as those of us who would like to move beyond the United States and say go into Africa, it is then the upliftment and the sustaining of that nation and of that state. It is putting the needs and wants and concerns and interests of Black people first, and then seeing how we can help and support our other brothers and sisters that are abroad. Because Black nationalism does not mean that we are trying to be Black supremacists, because I don't believe in supremacy. It does not mean that we are separatists. We could coexist right here. But what it means is that we will not be oppressed and used by white politicians who make promises and make big claims, but yet pull out as soon as they get into office. It is that you have to be accountable to Black people every time you do something that will affect indirectly or directly Black people. And it is putting Black people then, Black leaders in place to then make sure that those things happen. It is making sure that we keep HBCUs in place. For those of you who don't know
what that is, Tevin, tell us what that is.
That is historically Black colleges and or universities, which were created right after a couple years after the Civil War. Black education institutions specifically designed for Black people. It is that model that I think that should apply across the board, where we have hospitals and medical teams that are put together to see and study the illnesses and the diseases and the conditions that affect Black people. And if there are treatments that would be specifically designed for Black people, that would, like I would imagine, I'm not a doctor, so people know that, but I would imagine that not every kind of person there's a universal way to treat people. You know what I mean? Yes. I think different people require different things based on our bio predisposition. And although we are one race, our one race has now grown and evolved into a lot of different kinds. And so we need science and medicine and treatment to respond accordingly. So yeah, so that's Black nationalism, and Pan-Africanism is just like a step above that, which is that it is calling for the liberation, the unity, and the global engagement and interaction of Black people around the world. So it is the idea that no matter where you are born, if you are of African descent, and I mean direct African descent, not this like idea that, oh, well, humanity began in Africa, so therefore everybody's African. Like, no, like, yes and no. So it's those of us, who it's I don't want to get all specific because we all know what I mean, but you are Black and no matter where you are, what language you speak, what religion you are, what your sexual orientation, your gender identity, it does not matter. You are Black. To me, you belong to the Pan-African community. Therefore, you deserve the privileges and the benefits and the support and the love and the care and the community that comes with the Pan-African community.
Yeah. Thank you for that lesson. And I'd like to just, part of the way that I coach and the way that I teach, Tevin, is that I like to be really obvious about what I'm doing. And so for any white folks that are listening to this, that if they're like, oh, I've never heard about Black nationalism or about Pan-Africanism, that there's this thing called Google, and we can go learn more about it. And that you as a Black man were willing to be our teacher because you're on this platform and I'm paying you, but I want to make sure that they know they can't just start going and taking a poll of all of their Black friends and colleagues and what they think about Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism, because that is not cool. And this is our work to do. Our work, meaning white people need to educate ourselves.
Word.
So, and then I also want to speak because I want to acknowledge, as a white person who has a whole lot more to learn, that when I do hear you talk about some of these, the ideology of Black nationalism, that there's an inside voice that goes, okay, I know Tevin, I trust Tevin, I know Tevin knows way more about the Black experience than I do, I'm going to listen to him. And then there's this voice that comes up and says, oh, but it does sound separatist. And he says he wants to, build community and solidarity, and it sounds like he just wants everything to be different. And so I just want to say to those folks listening that it's okay if we don't totally understand this, and that it's okay if there's fear and confusion that arises, and that if we want to start defending and pointing fingers, that's a normal reaction, and we can go talk to our white friends about why that's really hard, and we can keep listening to other Black voices.
Yeah, and if they want almost a contemporary example of Black nationalism, look at Atlanta. The city of Atlanta is close to what I'm sort of describing under the umbrella of the United States. United States. Another example from back in the day would be Tulsa, Oklahoma. Would be Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, Chicago, Illinois, before gentrification came in there. Harlem in the 50s and 60s. Those are examples of getting closer to the point, because as Malcolm said, we weren't always there, but we were getting close back in the day. But yeah, so those are some contemporary examples of what I mean for those white folks who are a bit nervous or a bit
right, and that it's also okay if I feel a bit nervous, right? And I want to say the way you just described that, in case this works with other white folks who may be paying you to be their teacher, is you using historical Black colleges and university as an example. That really makes sense to me, because I grew up in Virginia and I was near Howard University, which is an HBCU. And the more I learned, the more it totally makes sense. I can imagine if I'm a young Black adult that going to a school with Black teachers and Black roommates and Black students could be a safer place for me to learn. And maybe if I was Black, I would not be fed all these lies around what it means, to be an American, or, all this bullshit, right? So that makes total sense to me. And when you say, or healthcare, I've worked in healthcare, and more specifically, I've worked in hospice. And so I've sat in the living rooms, in the bedrooms of my Black neighbors here in Portland. And I'm really blessed that growing up in Virginia meant that I have had some exposure to Black people. I did not grow up here in Portland, Oregon. And I am so grateful that the nurse that was often paired with me in these Black families grew up in Louisiana. And so we understood, to our limited degree, that when we show up in those homes, we're going to say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. And we're going to use last names, because to be super familial and call an 80-year-old Black elder by their first name is disrespectful. And we know about Tuskegee, and we know how deep-rooted our current health system is in using Black bodies for science against will. And so we were at least a teeny tiny bit woke when we're showing up and holding space with Black families. And the idea that those families at the end of their life could have perhaps had Black nurses and Black social workers and Black bath aides and Black pastors to come and do their care, that sounds really amazing to me. And not, as a white woman, because to know that my whiteness will betray these Black families while I'm holding space with them in their living room, I can cause harm every time I open my mouth, but I would sure hope that Black families caring for loved one at the end of their lives don't have to sit with Lori's white fragility or the stupid shit that just slips out because of my terrible learning and knowledge, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to go a step further with the healthcare and say, and for those people who don't know of this healer, I can't really call him a doctor because he's much more than that. Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi is S-E-B-I. He has been known, documented, proven, went to the United States Supreme Court and won, proving that he has cured AIDS, he's cured syphilis, he's cured sickle cell, he's cured blindness, he's cured a plethora of different things using African compounds, using African herbs and holistic compounds. It is all natural, pH, an alkaline-based health system that, in my idea of Black nationalism, would be the root and the foundation of our healthcare, and of our nutritional system as well, because along with his healthcare plan is a nutritional system. And I think part of our ailments in our community, and just in the country, because it's not just Black people, but it's everybody in this country, is we're eating garbage. Myself included, because it's affordable. But yeah, I would point, would love and do love to point Black people, and especially all people, to Dr. Sebi, because his cures and his treatments have been proven to help us exponentially. And before he passed, he was not able to get Black leaders to take him seriously enough to heal our people. And when I can't speak about Black nationalism and talk specifically about health without mentioning to the viewers Dr. Sebi.
Okay, thank you for introducing me to somebody new. And I'm certainly all in on there being kinds of healing that are not wrapped up in a prescription or a pharmaceutical, right? And certainly a big believer in lots of different kinds of natural medicines. And I also think that in addition to all of the terrible violence that has happened within the institution of healthcare in this country, right? And a lot of things that we white physicians have learned has been at the expense of Black bodies. But that, like, it's a cute story, and I understand the intentions when we teach our children to say, hey, little Johnny, we're all the same inside. Color doesn't matter. Skin doesn't matter. Tev is Black and Mama's white, but we're all the same. I understand the good place that comes from, but like, let's look at how COVID is affecting different kinds of people. And like, what if the insides of Black bodies are a little different than my white body, and how we respond to different threats in our environment, and how, as you know, where we live and what food we put in our mouth and all the other sorts of systemic racism in this country are affecting our health. And so if we know that Black and brown bodies human beings are affected by COVID differently than my white family, are we asking why, right? Like, are we really digging into the huge complexity of why that is?
Yep. And that's really what it's all about. You know, it's really understanding that it's okay to be different. It is okay to be different. We should stop calling each other different races, because that's not the truth. But the truth is, we are just different kinds of people. We can still, because there are some things that help. There are some things that we can learn that specifically help white people that might also be a benefit to Black people. There are some things that might really help Black people, but someone who is Arab might also get a benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of us interacting with each other. Like, I would never be on the side of, I'm gonna go to Africa and I'm cutting off all communication with all different kinds of people. That's a narrow-minded way of going about the world, you know. But it is that, no, I'm gonna like figure out what's going on in my body so well that I'm able to heal and cure myself. And then I'm gonna share that information with my friends and with my allies who might be experiencing something similar. And that's all, and that's really all it comes down to, you know. But we're just not allowed to heal ourselves, or it doesn't seem that we're allowed to heal ourselves in the way that we see fit.
I just feel like I need to sit with that for a minute and not immediately lean into more words, right? I think one of the things that I'm trying to practice more of is that I don't have to have an answer for everything, and that I don't have to immediately step in and redirect, but that I can sit and let somebody's words land first in my mind and then also in my body, and just pay attention to, wow, what are the things that Latevin is throwing out? How are they landing with me? And what do I like completely take hook, line, and sinker? And what are the parts that I'm like, I'm not sure about that? And what are the parts that I'm like, oh, I don't agree with him at all, but it's not my place, so I'm not going to say anything, right? Like, all of that is happening simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think let me charge my phone here because it's telling me I got 20% left.
Yep.
I love that, and I'm also in a place where myself I do the same thing. You know, even when seeing Donald Trump make a statement, seeing a video posted, or another hashtag, whatever it is that I go, I don't agree with that, or oh wow, it's like, well, do I need to respond? Let me just take this in for myself. Let me like learn and see why this white person believes that all lives matter, even though I think it's bullshit. But you know what? To the other side. Let me. I am the kind of Black person who would love to read KKK publications and communications. If there is, what are they called? The Oath Keepers, like that militia and the Proud Boys. Like if they are sending out newsletters, I would read it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I got access to it, it's like, why not? Because I don't agree with them. Well, I might find that there's some commonality. There's some whatever. Like Marcus Garvey. I don't know if you can see Marcus Garvey. Is arguably probably the greatest leader of Black people ever. Used to meet with the Grand Dragon or the Grand Wizard, I don't know what they call him, of the KKK. And of course, people on all sides, white people would, question the KKK leader, and Black people would question Marcus Garvey. Yeah. And Garvey would come back and say, no, actually, we got a lot in common. Like, as we are Black nationalists, they are in a way white nationalists, and we can understand that. And again, this is back in those times, but they both were like Marcus Garvey said he doesn't want Black people a Black man sleeping with a white woman. Well, I don't want a Black woman sleeping with a white man. So he's like, they want their you know, right, they want to be safe, they want to be respected, they want, you know, whatever, and that's exactly what we want. And at the time, Marcus Garvey was very much so trying to get physically back to Africa. So he was, to white people, wanted America. He was like, you can have it. I want my so you see what I'm saying? So like that's what I mean of like, that's why I am open to reading different things and not responding so soon, because, you know, I got thinking to do myself, you know, and something that might seemingly seem antagonist to me might actually not be so antagonist. It might still be after it all, you know, but still it is, I learned that after getting the information and sitting with it and meditating on it before responding.
Which is such an incredible leadership skill, Tev. What I've learned in working with leaders for 10 years, you know, people are like, what are the top 10 signs of a leader? Or, you know, what makes a leader most successful? And I will say that two things that absolutely any leader I've ever respected have, and the first is curiosity, that I am willing to, in your words, stay open, right? That you've got some strong opinions about how you'd like the world to look. And you're still willing to sit with somebody who sees the world completely differently. And you're willing to pick up KKK material and read it, where that is not how I want to spend 2 seconds of my time, right? So you remain open to learning and curious, and because you're a complex person, you can do that and still have very solid beliefs and convictions, right? Anyone listening, be like Tev. And the other thing,
Tev has
the second trait.
Tev has flaws. I'm telling you.
Well, then you're just now modeling my second favorite leadership trait, which is humility. And that is that you will be emboldened and you will move through this world knowing who you are and what you want. And that when you screw it up, you'll be like, yeah, that was my bad, right?
Okay, yep.
I'm learning. So you're demonstrating curiosity and humility, which I think we can all learn to do more of. And I'm going to put you on the spot to take us out. And if you don't want to, we'll edit it. But because I believe your capacity to freestyle or beatbox or share some poetry or share your words is more valuable than anything that I can do, is there any part of your art or your spirit or your body that you want to share with us as we close out this really rich conversation?
Man, if I had been prepared for this, I would, but no, I don't.
I put you on the spot. It's fine.
I know. Only because I once wrote a poem that I think would speak to how I feel, and I think a way that could really close this out. But I don't, and I can't remember it. I remember the title. The title is a strong title. But I can't remember how it goes. The title is "I'm a Field Nigga." That's the title of it.
Okay. And I'm going to invite you to send me the poem so that I can post it to folks that watch this.
Okay, great. Yes, that's what I'll do. Yes.
And can you tell me just one, when you drop into that title, what is one bit of you that you feel in your body that that you're trying to communicate through that poem?
That I am today's Nat Turner and Malcolm X mixed.
We'll end with that. I love you, Tevin.
I love you as well, Lori. Thank you so much for having me. And for the people watching, continue to do your research. Don't believe a word I say. Don't trust the word I say, and go and look up everything that I say, and see if I deceived you or not. Because that is what it's about. Don't just listen to someone and take their word as bond. We live in a time where everything and everyone could be and might be deceitful. And so I charge you and I challenge you to go and look up and create your own thoughts and ideas about everything that I say and everything that I believe, and then be willing to have a good open and honest conversation and discussion about that with someone who has a shared living experience as you.
Thank you so much. Be well, Teb.
Be well. Thank you. I love you. And goodbye. Peace.